And welcome the panelists and everyone attending. I'd like to start with introductions and generally don't like to read material because it's a little dry to do that and not so responsive. But I would like to read through these because frankly it's important to hear who we have on the panel, the importance of them and what they've been doing. So I'll move through this as quickly as I can, but please have some patience. First, I'd like to introduce Allison Budvarson. We just heard that she's our incoming president of the board at CAMPS. But Allison is the COO and co-founder of Out of the Box Manufacturing, which is a contract manufacturer of electronic assemblies. And Allison has held positions in customer service, operations, human resources, executive administration, all within the manufacturing industry. And she's very passionate about supporting the local manufacturers, the manufacturing community, and the workforce development initiatives especially. She's very deeply involved with Puget Sound manufacturing community, sitting on advisory boards, not only the CAMPS one we just mentioned, but also Bates and Clover Park Technical Colleges. She is on the board of directors of the Association of Washington Business, AWB. Some of you may be familiar with that. She is active with the Center she's active with the Puget Sound chapter of the Surface Mount Technology Association as well. Justin, I'd like to introduce Justin Stiefel. Justin is the founder and co-founder and master distiller at Heritage Distilling Company located in Gig Harbor. Justin was raised in Spokane. Yeah, he's one of my, in my backyard as well. I'm down in Gig Harbor as well, so hello, Justin. Justin was raised in Spokane, Washington, and Anchorage, Alaska, having actually started life out in Renton. His curiosity for distillation started, believe it or not, when he was 6 years old, while watching reruns of MASH with his dad, and performed the first batch of distillation in the 7th grade. So I think it took me until about college to figure that out, so well done. He attended University of Idaho, where he earned his Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and went on to earn his Juris Doctor from Catholic University in Washington, D.C., graduating magna cum laude. From there, he also completed certified coursework at the U.S. Naval War College, focusing on national security and strategic decision-making. While he attended the law school at night, if that wasn't enough, he simultaneously worked full-time during the day for the United States Senate and the Senator Ted Stevens, who represented Alaska for the Republican Party. And at age 28, he became one of the youngest chiefs of staff in the modern era of the Senate, working for newly appointed Senator Lisa Murkowski. So Heritage started in 2011, became a reality when his wife and a few friends conceived of the concept, and they were camping and thought about it, and they soon compiled a business plan and got some financing and opened the company in 2012. Now Heritage is one of the fastest growing spirits brands in the Pacific Northwest and the largest independently owned distillery in Washington. Additionally, Heritage Distilling Company is the most awarded craft distillery in North America 7 years running out of nearly 2,000 distilleries. Justin has retained his license to practice law in Washington, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. He often speaks on the craft distilling movement, using his knowledge to offer training courses, and he works with lobbying groups and lawmakers on state legislation, tax policy, and regulations. And boy, that's a mouthful. Justin, welcome. Glad to meet you here, and look forward to learning more about your interesting and fascinating life so far.
Thank you.
The third, I'd like to introduce third panelist is Jim Mischel. And Jim is co-founder, CEO, and general counsel at Electric Mirror. And he's also CEO, founder of Safeology, two different companies. Electric Mirror is the global leader in mirror technology and has served the hospitality industry for over 20 years. Strong design and surprising technology makes electric mirrors products the most effective way to instantly communicate excellence and flawless luxury standards to discerning guests. Their industry-leading reputation for product originality, flexibility, and quality is unmatched. And now that technology is available to you in your own home. Products from Electric Mirror offer a selection of lighted mirrors, mirror TVs, and medicine cabinets, which are perfect solutions for contemporary hotels, restaurants, residences, all used in bathrooms, bedrooms, hallways, and more. It's all made in the USA, right up in Everett, Washington. Safeology is the latest startup endeavor that Jim has undertaken and his company. It's the UVC disinfectant expert, bringing research, technology, and manufacturing together to create clean spaces free of pathogens like viruses and bacteria. Also located in Everett, Safeology operates its 125,000 square foot manufacturing facility, which is home to hundreds of employees who come to work every day under around a single mission, creating a cleaner, safer world. And I would just add a note. Jim, welcome to the panel, and great to have you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add a note that these three panelists are among those in the business community that we have here in the Northwest that demonstrate resilience, our topic today. They saved their company through the pandemic time, and in the process saved jobs. They faced down reality and made meaning of their hardships, right? So we all suffered hardships, but these distinguished executives really did their job and did it very well. They improvised in their recovery from that disaster that hit us in March, and they continue to do so. So welcome, Allison, Justin, and Jim. I'd like to lead with just a couple of comments before we get into the discussion. And resilience is a very popular topic these days. So how does somebody know that they have resilience? It seems like it's something that develops and is shaped over time, like personality or creativity or work ethic. It's developed through life circumstances. Webster's defines it as an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Resilience is not about being tough, thick-skinned, or stoical. Rather, developing resilience in difficult times is about learning what tools we have that enable us to overcome. Resilience is merely the skill and capacity to be robust under conditions of enormous stress and change, which I think we all have been through this year. It's been a tough year for everyone. So the first question I'd like to ask is, in thinking about founding your company, going back to that time as a founder, if you could briefly describe the company's origin story, and really, again, thinking that we have three panelists and less than 45 minutes left, just think about when you started the company, what were some of the challenges you faced through startup and then also through scaling the business up until the COVID? What were some of the obstacles that you faced and how did you overcome them? Jim, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. Well, this is a pleasure, so thank you very much for having me. Our core company, Electric Mirror, is fairly mature. My dad and I started this in 1998 in my parents' garage. And we were in the garage a very long time, I think probably 7 years in the garage. Literally, our first major step out was when I came to work one day in the garage, and my mom said, "I'm kicking you and your dad out. I signed a lease for you guys. We moved you down the street." I said, "Well, how are we going to do that? We don't have any money." So she had a lot of faith. Her name is Faith, and that's probably why we're in business today, because we definitely are big believers over here of what God could do with really small things. So I mean, literally, it probably took us 10 years to get our company really off the ground. And we started really growing and catching on. I mean, initially, our products weren't known. And so we had to build our own channels. And that just took a really long time. And we never gave up. And our company really expanded and grew. And amazingly, we've sold products to people in 100 different countries. We're really big in the hotel industry and the commercial industry. And you probably have stayed in hotels where you've seen our lighted mirrors or our mirror TVs or our smart mirror technology. So we've rode a pretty cool wave and invented most of those products. I'm a patent attorney by background, and we've always tried to be creators and inventors over here. So, it's been a growing experience. Our new facility we've been in now going on 5 years in Everett. And we're a dual manufacturing. We have US manufacturing. We also have global manufacturing. So, it's been many opportunities, a lot of hard work. US manufacturing is very difficult, I got to admit. I mean, it is hard work. So, that's sort of brought us to, 2020, we were looking to really grow about 20%. And kind of ran into a brick wall. I guess we'll talk a little bit later about that.
Yes, Jim, thank you for that, and we certainly will. I want to bring us up to the COVID pandemic in a bit, but just to kind of start with the origin story, so thank you for that. Allison, can we get some comments from you on how it started and then some of the challenges that your company has faced through startup and scale up?
Sure. Chad and I, my husband, Chad Budvarson, and I started our business in 2008. And we actually filed for our business license a month after we got married, almost to the day. But I think that starting in the last economic downturn was good practice for us. And we realized early that if we wanted to have a successful business, we really needed to be willing to put in the work ourselves. And when people ask me, what do I need to do to be successful? That's one of the things I always tell them. No one is going to do this for you. If you want this, you better expect to work hard for it. And Chad and I are great because we each have our own skills and we don't try to infringe upon the other person. So we've always been a really great team. I think that that's been a part of how we've been able to be successful over the years as well. But the challenge in scaling, I think, was born out of the maybe some of the things that made us successful originally. When you start a business, and my background is in operations and customer service, and I was doing payroll and accounts receivable and answering the telephone, and all these things. You find yourself doing things that you aren't necessarily trained to do, but you make it work. Like Justin said earlier about his colleague Wendy, which I love, even if you don't know the answer, figure out where to find it and then back it up. So having that type of mentality and then trying to transition from what some may call the quarterback to the coach was interesting for Chad and I. I think some days we still struggle with that transition, but that's something that I think in scaling was something that we've had to learn.
So shifting from running the company, which you're still involved in doing, obviously, to coaching your people, yeah, that's a big transition. I know that feeling, having done that myself. So it's a difficult thing to overcome when you're accustomed to having all of the you're expected to have all of the answers, right? And the truth is we don't. So so great, thank you for that, Allison. And so Justin, can you share with us a little bit of your Genesis story and some of the challenges?
Sure. So you kind of alluded to it from the bio. Prior to starting the company, I've been working for several other folks who we had some success in getting them across the finish line. Some of the campaigns I ran, some of the company launches, and some of the other initiatives. And so I basically took a bet on myself and said, hey, I've been successful in getting these other people across the finish line. I think I'm pretty good at doing certain things and laying out a plan and then trying to figure out how to go execute against it. And if I'm as good as I think I am, I better, do it myself. And if it's not successful, then maybe I wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So we started this. It really did start around the campfire discussion. Started because the state law had changed the year prior to allow our business to be legal. Prior to 2009, you couldn't get a distillery license in Washington. You could only open a brewery or a winery. And so we took advantage of that because on the engineering side and the legal side, the two come together. The challenge for us is we are in, besides manufacturing, trying to launch a manufacturing company in the U.S., which Jim alluded to, is very difficult. We're in a highly regulated industry. We're probably as regulated as the gun industry, the healthcare industry, and yet we have these additional layers of sales obligations we have to run through third-party distributors by law. We can't always go sell our product direct to a consumer. And so we're dealing with the reality of 80-year-old laws that are antiquated in the alcohol space specifically. So trying to launch a manufacturing company in the US overlaid with all these crazy arcane laws. And then, oh, by the way, you just happen to be, entering the pool with the biggest brands in the world that have billions of dollars and decades or hundreds of years of brand equity and heritage. It's a challenge. So we were a little crazy, but we're still here.
Justin, thank you for that. And I'm hearing a repeating theme around starting a manufacturing company or any company for that matter, whether it be in Washington State or just across the country. I know I'm familiar with that in other states as well, and it's a very difficult thing to do. It's one of the things I most admire about entrepreneurs like you is that you embrace the reality of what you got and you just keep going. You find solutions. You just continue to work it until you get the right formula. And you've obviously done that. So a common belief around resilience has to do with optimism, right? That people believe that resilience stems from an optimistic viewpoint or an optimistic nature. But Jim Collins in his book Good to Great talked about the Stockdale Paradox, which says that optimists really miss the point of accepting their reality and dealing with it. Just to remind the group, the Stockdale Paradox. Jim met with Admiral Stockdale at a point in Palo Alto when he was at the business school, and Stockdale was at a conference, and so he interviewed him, and he asked him who didn't make it out of the camp. This was again, for those of you who don't know Stockdale, he was imprisoned in the Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War, and went through unspeakable punishment and made it through. And so, the question was, well, who didn't make it through that? He was in there for 8 years, the longest prisoner they had. And he said, oh, that's easy. It was the optimists. And so when we think about resilience, we need to think in terms of how do we embrace the reality that's around us as we begin to scale. So when you have something like a pandemic coming that hit us in March, what do you do if you're not prepared? And I don't know about you all, but I have yet to find anybody that was prepared for this. So I guess taking us back to that day in March when we learned about this pandemic, as an executive, a founder, an owner of the company that you have, what did you do? What were some of the business issues that needed to be determined? What were some of the stakeholder issues, suppliers, employees, customers? I mean, kind of bring us back to the slamming reality of this pandemic back in March. Allison, could we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. I think you're right. Nobody was prepared, right? But we were all suddenly faced with this reality. So I think Chad and I have always approached our business with a high level of conservatism. So we really looked at the situation and thought, what's the worst that could happen? And let's make sure that we have a plan for all of that. And then let's just cross our fingers and toes that we never have to touch that plan and everything will be okay. So we really approached it, with that Boy Scout mentality, plan for the worst and hope for the best. So we did things like reaching out to all of our customers to try to see, what they were, I should say our larger customers, were they going to anticipate an impact? Reaching out to financial institutions, mentors in our network, that helped us really understand what our options were going to be in the future if things got difficult for us. We were really lucky to not have to pull the trigger on a lot of those plans that we, excuse me, sorry about that, that we set up, but we had them there if we needed them. And I think that gives you a certain level of confidence, just knowing what to expect. And we really tried to communicate with our employees and let people know, if X, then Y will happen. So I think that for us, the separation was in the preparation. Is that Russell Wilson or?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about the football metaphors today.
Sounds like a true Seahawks fan. So this was a plan that you and Chad had developed, or perhaps with your team, and like a contingency plan or a safety plan, or what was the? And this happened before the pandemic, so you came into it with a plan.
It was right at the beginning, and we went through all of those things. What's going to happen with our employees if we do face a situation in which we have to reduce force? So we had a list of all of the areas based on having an HR background, knowing who we would need to cut if we needed to cut, and having a very robust reason of why, and then also having information available for people if they had to go out to unemployment. Also reaching out to having a financial plan, reaching out to our bank and our accounting firm to have them help us understand what resources would be available. We even reach out to our landlord to see, if things get bad, is there anything that we can do with them to know?
Well, I bet he was real helpful.
I declined to comment, I suppose.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah. We just really tried to touch all of those bases and make sure that we understood what the worst case scenario was going to be.
Well, that's thank you for that, Allison. So planning is so critical, and even contingency planning. I think that's a big part of our planning cycle. Justin.
Well, actually, we were a little ahead of the curve, I think. If you go back to December, we were watching the news of what was happening in Wuhan, and I was monitoring that on a regular basis. And then the very first case in the U.S. was in Everett, and it was announced on January 21st. And so January 21st, I convened our team, and I said, the first case is in the U.S. It's in our backyard. It's coming. We have about 6 weeks lead time to build up as much inventory in the warehouse as possible, because there will be shutdowns. And so that day we started inventory build, and we went into overtime, and we stuffed the warehouse with as much product as we could and raw ingredients as we could. And fast forward to March 12, 13, the governors started shutting things down. And 3 days prior to that, the warehouse was completely full. We couldn't fit another thing in any of our locations to carry us through on the inventory side. Because you just don't know what's going to happen with logistics, finance, just-in-time material, and so on. And so then, we had some pretty tough decisions to make around the 13th of March. And the systems had not been stressed yet, the government systems. If you remember, on the earliest wave, as people were being laid off, they were still able to get into, in the case of Washington, the Unemployment Security Division website to go get benefits. And the federal government stepped in. And so I convened our staff, and we had a pretty big layoff that day, because I told them, we're going to get shut down tomorrow. And that included all of our production, all of our tasting rooms, everything else. And there is going to be a line out the door on the internet and on the phone for people to go file for unemployment, and you will not get through. So as soon as we hang up on this phone call, it's a company-wide phone call, and we had announced the layoffs, you need to get on the webpage right now and go sign up for the benefits. Because if you wait, you're going to be out of luck for several weeks. And there are still people today who have not gotten any of their benefit payments from the spring and summer because the backlog was so great. So in this case, unfortunately, we predicted the future a little bit, and we were able to prepare our teams for that. I'm expecting another nationwide, very hard clampdown to happen on January 20th, because what else happens January 20th? A new president's going to get sworn in. There's a whole new Corona task force. It's already been announced. They're already forecasting it. Yesterday's news is talking about a 4 to 6 week mandatory national shutdown. It's coming. And even today, Governor Inslee is going to have a press conference at 5:30. The governor of Illinois is talking about shutdown. San Francisco yesterday shut down. So we have to take the lessons learned from January and February and March and get ready right now.
So thank you for that, Justin. So sort of a proactive as opposed to reactive approach is something that we could think about developing. Thinking ahead, looking at the future a bit, and thinking about what could be, what are some of the things coming at us.
There are no coincidences, right? There are no coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. So look at the information that's being gathered and then build the worst case scenario around it.
Mm-hmm. Good point. That's one to remember. Jim, Mischel, how about you? What were some of the things that happened with you? What plans or the contingencies and so on did you wind up doing, and some of the issues that needed to be addressed?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because we do have operations in China, and we were aware of the virus. We were shut down over there. At the time, I thought I was a real genius, and I brought in a bunch of raw materials for our factory here to cover the Chinese operation. I had never imagined that we'd be, dealing with the issue here. We did get luckily I have some great team members, and one of my senior leaders came in and said, "You better start practicing for, a shutdown." And I was like, really? Obviously, I don't watch TV as much as Justin does. Or I'm watching the wrong stations. So we started practicing, work from home for, half our company, which is, office-oriented people. The other half, we obviously we're a manufacturing company, and we instantly started flying in masks from overseas because we actually need masks to operate here every day. But we wanted to be prepared, so we brought in a lot of PPE. But it was a tough time. I mean, I would say the number one priority for us is how do I save my people's jobs? And I had what I call the McDonald's test. I was like, well, if McDonald's isn't shutting down, if they're essential, we're essential. And I, as I begin to look in the details, I mean, it's horrible that people have been losing their businesses and have had to totally shut down. I mean, when I hear, Justin, your story, it's like, how in the world do you function? It turns out that we do a great amount of healthcare business, and we had 40 hospitals we're working on. So I did, hang our hat on an essential business and, declared as essential. There's no amount of money, I could tell you, the government could have paid us to cover the losses we would have experienced here with a full shutdown. And that's just the brute fact. So when the time came to shut down, all the office people, but some senior leaders worked from home. And I showed up with our senior production floor managers, and anyone that wanted to come to work came to work. And I would say 90% of the people came to work, and we opened all of our doors. And a fascinating story is the same week I heard a famous doctor on Fox News. I said, get him on the phone. I called him the next day, and he told me this is an airborne virus. You need to be super concerned about the air. So we, opened every door in our facility. We turned this into a wind tunnel, factory wind tunnel. And, we came to work. There's so many, literally it was, I love that Allison had a plan. Our plan seemed to change every other day. And depend on what's, our customers are all over the world, all over the country. And I had piles of products being stacked up here, because customers in California couldn't take their products. We put some projects on trucks that literally just drove around the country, hoping that eventually the customer would take their products. So it was, a very complex and difficult season. Everyone in our company sacrificed. Everyone took a pay cut here. Everyone took reduced hours. Once again, this was before the PPP loans came out, and I was just trying to make sure people had money to feed their families. And that was probably the most driving factor in even staying open, because I had no idea, if we went out of business, I would have been fine. But for our team, this didn't make sense to me. So we just kept rolling and dealt with the punches as they came.
And Jim, do I take that to mean that you had no layoffs?
We eventually did have some reductions, but it was fairly minimal. I would say at the end of the day, it was about 20%, and it was months later. We kind of, continued to hold on as long as we could. I look back in hindsight, my people, they, took huge sacrifices. It would probably been a better deal for them if actually they were laid off, but we didn't know that then. Because, people took reduced hours and then they couldn't get, unemployment. And as Justin mentioned, I still have people as well that never did get any unemployment. It was the craziest system I've ever seen. I would say it was not well managed. But at the end of the day, we're like, okay, what can we do with the resources we have? And so we, had to stretch that long as possible. Practically though, on a weekly, well, not weekly, every day I get a cash report and I look on a weekly basis, where's the line? Where's black versus red? And we're watching every cost, and our people, someone came to me on the factory floor and they just like, hey, I found a way we could save $6 a day. I'm like, this is a multi-million-dollar operation. I'm like, great, we'll take it. And so our team is amazing, and people love coming to work here, and the sacrifices our employees are making right now are unbelievable. And, I told them, let's hold the line. I referred to the Gettysburg War battle where, there was the key line needed to be held by Chamberlain. And if they didn't hold the line, well, the entire Northern Army would be wiped out. And so my guys, hold the line, like we're going to make it through this. And they've been fantastic in holding the line. And we've been reinventing ourselves at the same time. But, really amazing people. Family is a big deal around here. Faith is a big deal around here. And it's really, the sacrifices people have made are amazing. At the same time, very practical, watching every penny.
Jim, that's a great story. And for all three of the panelists, thank you so much for sharing that as you have. They're sometimes often very personal stories. So thank you for that. So when we think about our people, that's one thing, but then we have other elements of the business, right? Processes and products. What kind of changes have we made in that area? What kind of lasting changes, new ideas, new ways of doing things, new products that have been developed? Justin, you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. Yeah. For us, the most obvious thing to do was to get in the hand sanitizer business, which we did for a time. Really ramped up and put it into healthcare, put it into retail, direct to consumer. That actually allowed us to bring many people back into the production facility and put them back to work through the summer. Now, it just so happens that the huge players in this space and the planet started to get their supply chains back in alignment. So everything's flooded now. So we took the time to start to work on what our next products are going to be. I know we have some fans of BSB here on the presentation. I heard that a little earlier, but
Oh yeah,
we've got some exciting new products that we're going to be launching in the first quarter of next year. The team's been working on that. Again, we are in a highly regulated environment, and so we're somewhat restricted in terms of what we can do to reach the customer directly. But direct to consumer is where we think the future is going to go. The more we can touch the consumer, the more we can collect data, use our tasting rooms, use the internet, use third-party channels for direct-to-consumer delivery. We've had to pivot. I tell my folks I kind of hate the word pivot now, and I feel like a ballerina with a pulled hamstring because the governors keep coming out with these changes, what we can do and what we can't do. So we've had to set up entire outdoor service facilities, tents. I didn't know there was such a thing as a tent gutter, but now there are tent gutters to keep rain off between tents that connect, so we can have customers enjoy cocktails outside under cover in the winter. That was another thing, in August when they said, hey, we're going to shut down bars and restaurants indoors and you have to move to outdoors. We're not in Arizona. We're not in Texas. We have a wet, cold winter in Western Washington. So our team, we went on in August, we bought a lot of tents, bought a lot of heaters, and we went through the process of building because we need to stay open. And we know that the consumer wants to get out. We know the consumer is feeling cabin fever already, and they have to go somewhere. And so if we spend the time now to build for the winter, we'll be one of the few locations that's open, that's covered, that has heat, and that is compliant. And many of the other facilities, bars and restaurants, don't have that luxury. Let's do it now. And we've had tremendous success, and people will continue to come, and we're able to keep our folks employed. Team is really what it's about. Jim talked about it, having the right team around you, having them bought into the vision. I like your comment about optimism, Michael. I am an eternal optimist. There's always a chance. Russell Wilson has taught us that in most of the football games that we watch recently.
I got that right.
Right, most of the games. But even if I want to use a battlefield analysis, someone who's getting ready to lead their army into battle, they know they're going to lose people. They know there will be casualties. Yet they have to go out and inspire that team to go attack the hill or to go hold the line. They have to inspire that. Even though internally behind the scenes, they know there are challenges and they might not win, the leadership team. So you have to almost bifurcate your personality. You have to be somewhat schizophrenic. You have to be optimistic for the team to buy into the vision to go execute. And then you have to be very tactical behind the scenes to figure out what's going to happen when things don't go right, because things never go according to plan.
Right, so it's not just a concern and care about our people. It's not totally just about redefining our processes or even developing a new product. It's almost a leadership style that you're talking about that allows us to be an enduring company. Allison, let me turn the direction on you for just a moment. I know when the pandemic hit you as an electronics assembly manufacturer, you have a lot of people working there in very close proximity. So the plexiglass shields and the PPE and all of that, I mean, what were some of the things that you all had to do on your processes that got you through this?
Yeah, I think first I want to touch on what you and Justin were referring to there about the leadership style. And I think that has really been true for us as well. You have to lead by example. Nobody wants to wear a mask, but we do it. And we make sure that we are wearing a mask whenever we're supposed to be wearing a mask. And I actually participate in the twice per shift sanitization of our common areas on our shop floor. 10:30 every day that I'm in the facility, I'm wiping down light switches and door handles, because I want people to see that I care about their health enough that I'm going to step up and take that that job as well. So that's part of it. But I think what we did was we moved our workstations around to account for the 6 foot of distance. We bought gobs of masks, provided 2 masks to all of our employees. We were just stockpiling disinfecting wipes and bleach and Lysol and all that kind of stuff, as everyone was. But we even went so far as to purchased individual lunch tables. As we looked and we realized, okay, what is the highest risk area in our facility? And that's when people take their masks off to eat their lunch, you know. So we had to reinvent our break room even to keep people safe. As you say, Coach Mike, you know, we sit in a manufacturing environment. One unit is touched by many, many people. So if one person has an infection, the possibility that it could be spread is pretty high. So we were just really focusing on that and taking no chances, and attacking the risk wherever we found it.
Great, and that's terrific. And I know that was a big challenge, and you were up to the challenge, you and Chad and your whole team there. Congratulations on that. And can I assume, I think I understood that you had not had any positive testing, anyone that, or maybe you did and had to send them home, I'm not sure, but I can't recall that conversation. I need some
wood to knock on, but we have not had anyone test positive on our staff. So we've had a
so in providing that leadership and being out there yourself, leading by example, wiping down the doorknobs and the surfaces, and you know, not only is that excellent leadership and showing that you're willing to be part of this with them, that you're swimming in that water with them, but you're also, you know, you're doing a function, and maybe the function that you did would help to save people from not getting the virus. So well done on that. Switching to Jim. Jim, I know that you had an epiphany, if you will, that led you into a whole new product line. Can you share about that?
Yeah, right before the shutdown, my brother came to my office and said, hey, you really need to revive our UV technology. It's something we had in our previous lighting products, our lighted mirror products, but it's been 10 years. And he left, and I thought about it. That week of the shutdown, I was in the hospital having my first baby. And I started, you know, my wife was in labor, and I, of course, was walking the hospital floor, looking at the lighting fixtures and thinking about UVC technology. He likes that part of the story. Eventually, I got yelled at, hey, I'm having a baby. Okay. But, you know, so much of our business is the hotel industry. You can imagine it's a depression for the hotel market. And I really knew we had to rethink our business. And within 2 to 3 days of being in the hospital and thinking about what we could do if we could clean surfaces in the air with our UVC technology, what the implications would be. The next week I was back at work stealing our engineers, and I met with them and I said, you know, in great crisis is also great opportunity. Do you want to go kill some viruses? You know, they were all in on that. You know, before it was Safeology, it was going to be Virus Hunter. And literally within 3 months, we had assembled 4 amazing scientists. We had prototyped probably 10 different products. We had created a brand new company, new website, new marketing material. And we, you know.
And that's the Safeology.
That's the Safeology, that's right. And also, you know, had our level 3 biosafety test going on to prove definitively how quickly we could kill the virus. The exciting thing is literally for 50 cents a day, we could put a fixture on your ceiling and kill the virus in the air in a 500 square foot room. And it's pretty phenomenal when you think about the implications. You know, once again, we're still in this. Hearing Justin talk, I'm like, oh man, we're still in this. And you know, I must be an entrepreneur by heart because this is the most exciting time of my life. I mean, you know, having been a CEO of our traditional business, you know, I'm probably a below average manager, I guess. But you know, doing something new and getting our team behind it and a new vision is really inspiring for all of us. And you know, luckily, you know, I get to work with my brother and my dad every day, and they are all entrepreneurs. So they're always in the "we can do it" club. I would say most people would never dream of us taking this type of risk. In fact, I've seen a number of comments, feedback that we get through just different surveys, and a lot of them say the CEO is crazy. And so, you know, I think probably maybe from their perspective, and what they are seeing, they may think, man, this guy is taking a huge risk. From my perspective, I'm like, wow, this is the smartest move we could do right now. And so I think inspiring people as we're doing this is continually converting people to, yeah, you know, this makes a lot of sense for our company, and we could be two companies. So we've been, you know, at this point, I've sold half the engineering staff, all of R&D, and we have just a number of people dedicating huge amounts of time to make this happen. It's difficult times, right? I mean, literally difficult times. We, you know, back to 20% of our people aren't here. We want to bring them back, you know. You know, some of them got furloughed and have been just waiting to come back, and we want them back. And so I'm doing everything possible in my abilities to, you know, make this company successful and growing. But it's been, for me, it's been fun, you know. I love the challenge. It's like, this is exciting times. Like, we can do something that you could save people's lives. You know, we don't get to say that often. And our traditional business was about beauty and great lighting. But I guess to have a new business that's about saving people's lives is pretty inspiring for our team, and we're all in on it. So hopefully that helps.
Jim, thank you. Yeah, thank you for those insights, and congratulations on starting the new business and sort of a new chapter in life. I would like to comment on one thing that you said. You were self-deprecating and quite critical of your management, and I would say that knowing you, and in full disclosure, I do know Jim. Jim and I have known each other a number of years. There are 1% of the companies in the United States that would fall into the category of success that you have had. So you're in the top 1%. So I would disagree with your assessment about management. You've done a phenomenal job, and so congratulations. And I would say that to all three of you. I just have enormous respect for entrepreneurs like you that have taken that risk and stepped out and done it. It's an amazing life when we can do it and make that work. In the short time that we've got left, I just wanted to make a final comment, and then we can toss it over for questions for the last 5 minutes or so. I was reading, preparing for this a bit, and reading, there was an HBR article recently about how resilience works by Diane Cotu. And this follows along a little bit with the Stockdale Paradox that Jim Collins has developed, and also similar to Gary Hamel at the London School of Economics. They all have a similar model. But bottom line is, first of all, the people that are possessing three defining characteristics. First, they accept the harsh realities facing them. Collins talks about accepting the brutal facts, facing the harsh reality. So just deal with the fact that it's happening. You can be optimistic, but like Justin has done, you accept it and you deal with it. Allison and Jim also. The second after that is that they find meaning in terrible times. Jim talks about faith. Allison talked about her people, Justin as well, the people, and the customers and the brand and the market to protect the company. But they find meaning. This goes back to core values and purpose. Typically, people that are resilient have a very well-defined set of core values and purpose. And I know in my own coaching, that's usually where I started engagement, is at that level, because that's so foundational. And then the third, which all three of you have exhibited and demonstrated through this discussion, the third is that resilient people have an uncanny ability to improvise. That's the innovation, the creativity. I mentioned Gary Hamel earlier. He said most people would say that it's unusual through a crisis to find creativity as a person's character. But in fact, as Jim just said, he's never felt more alive and having the most fun in his life in a strange kind of way in a pandemic. But from the business career, he's extremely creative. Justin, you've been extremely creative, and Allison as well. The creativity factor is alive and well with all three of you. So I think you as panelist companies have all three of these in place, and I'm very impressed with that. So thank you so much. I'd like to turn this over to questions, and I'm Kirk, if you can manage the chat. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions on this.
There's been quite a few compliments, so congratulations to Jim and great comments from everybody. And I'll just say this has kept me on the edge of my seat, so this has been excellent. Let's see. Somebody's wondering about hand sanitizer as a Christmas gift. So, but does anybody else have any questions? You can go ahead and come off of mute if you've got some questions for the panelists.
Got a question for Justin. Hey, Justin. So you talked about strategies for resilience, and you mentioned that direct to customer is one of your strategies. Yet January 20th is a critical date. Do you see your company going more toward direct to customer in the immediate future?
Oh yeah, we've been working on this. First off, Dan, nice to see you again. I hope you're doing well. We've been working on this for several months. We know that long term for the company, direct to consumer ultimately is where we can engage the consumer in that consumer journey and learn from the consumer, and then find that next magical product that might be the next one we take on a larger scale. Any company you look at that has a broad product portfolio, there's always one lead dog in that portfolio that emerges and carries the burden of the rest of the organization. So we're looking for that next one now. We're going to continue to evolve and continue to do more direct to consumer. Part of that is pushing the envelope. When the shutdowns in Oregon happened, I told our staff, I don't care if it's legal or not legal, we're going to start delivering to the home from our Oregon facility. And we got a nasty gram from the Oregon Liquor Control Board. But what it did is it opened up a discussion for us to be able to negotiate, and they ended up changing the rules to allow us and others to deliver direct to the home. We did the same thing here in Washington, because come hell or high water, I don't give a damn. And they're going to have to drag me out of here in handcuffs if it means, that ultimately we're not doing something we should be doing. I tell people all the time, you cannot be constrained by what you thought your business was going to be 10 months ago. You've got to be open to any possibility. And especially in the regulatory environment, there are really only three things that are very difficult, if not impossible, to change. The first are the general laws of physics and thermodynamics. We can't change those. The second is the Constitution, very difficult to change. And the third are the 10 Commandments. Okay, can't change those. So everything else is subject to change. And whether we have to go to a regulator or a legislator or a governor or whoever, nothing is written in stone right now. That's all open to interpretation and push the envelope.
Boy,
Thank
that's great. Thank you, Justin, for that. Somebody just asked the question about looking ahead at January 20th, and Justin, you partially answered this, but Jim and Allison, any other thoughts about a plan in a world where there could be further shutdowns?
I'll take a crack at this, and maybe writing off what Justin said. You know, you got to be creative. If you look at the government, talk about the most uncreative people ever. You know, I recently had my dad, who's, you know, works with me every day. He had to go to the hospital. They wouldn't let me in. I've known people who've lost family members. They couldn't go in and see their family members. What? You can't go get a hazmat suit and put it in, you know, put it on and walk in. It just shows you, don't wait for the government to be creative for you. It'll never happen. I think as business owners, I see a lot of small businesses. It's like, wow, they got to totally think outside their traditional lines. Justin delivering product directly to the home. Great. I mean, that's thinking outside traditional lines. And so, you know, hopefully there isn't another shutdown, but I think it makes sense. We need to be prepared, and we need to think about our business differently. You know, we're really a B2B company, and I look at consumer as well. And trust me, I've been to Home Depot enough to know Home Depot's not closing down, and everyone in this country seems to be going there. So why wouldn't I go after that market? You know, maybe I need to go on Amazon to sell some of our products, and totally rethink what we're doing. But I think it does take creativity. It's, you know, it's tough to see businesses shut down when I'm like, wow, I think they didn't think about this. Like, I think there could have been a different plan for them. A friend of mine owns a bakery, and they just shut the whole thing down. I was like, I thought, I think they could have figured out a different way to do this and fought through it. And so my message is, don't give up, rethink what you're doing. And also, you know, leverage what you're doing. It's hard to totally reinvent yourself. Once again, like, we're not reinventing ourselves. I have channels. I'm in the lighting business. I am sort of reinventing ourselves. So what are you doing already that you could just think a little bit differently about and leverage that? I think that will be the game changer for you.
And Jim, thank you for that.
Can I add something?
Real quick? Go ahead, Justin.
In response to Jim, he's exactly right. Every business is essential if they think about it the right way. And what I want to do is I want to throw it, Wendy, if she would type in the chat box, Wendy Flick, who's our chief compliance officer and is on your board now. There's a program in Washington State where you submit to the Department of Emergency Services and you get a series of certificates to give to your people to keep in their cars that literally get them past roadblocks in the event there are shutdowns. So Wendy, if you would put that in a chat box, everybody is essential. You got to figure out how to do it, and then get your get out of jail free card and keep it in your car.
That's so cool.
And what I would add to that is, if you think you aren't an essential business, you are, in that you have people that need to get to their offices because people need to be paid, taxes need to be filed. And so the cards, we haven't had to use them yet, but you know, like Justin said, think outside the box. And I would also like to clarify that we are not selling to minors. That is the one line that I've held this whole time, and we will not be doing that. But yeah, working with Justin definitely keeps me on my toes.
I wanted to chime in a little bit too. There's something that Jim alluded to earlier that has been something that's key to our success as well. And that's that diversity of the customer base. I think that we've all had our eyes opened recently about the effect that situations beyond our control can have on supply chain and our customers. You know, there's an awfully big business located in Washington recently that has stopped operating. You know, aerospace has really been affected in Washington, and thank goodness, Out of the Box has a very diverse base of customers. And when aerospace slowed down and medical devices picked up, we had the certifications that we needed to be able to support that change in business. So I would say diversity of customer base is another really important strategy moving forward, even if there is another shutdown.
Allison, thank you for that. Very, very, very appropriate comment and timely. We are at the end of our time. I'd like to conclude with just a quick thought. I mentioned Gary Hamel earlier, great author and thinker at the London School of Business and Economics. And his last book, Humanocracy, is quite a substantial body of work. It's highly recommended. But Gary says that your company needs to address 4 key challenges to achieve this resilience that we're talking about. And he really is focused on what Justin was referring to, and Jim and Allison also, the proactive thinking, not the reactive thinking. How do we move from being a sitting duck and getting killed by this this catastrophic event? How do we move from that into being way more proactive? And so there's 4 points. I'll make them quickly. The first we've already talked about. It's accepting the brutal facts. As he says, conquer denial. Don't deny it. It's there. It's in front of you. You got to do something about it. Value variety. He calls it the insurance against the unexpected. So in other words, instead of making 1 or 2 very large bets, place a bunch of smaller bets. Smaller, lower risk experiments. And it's that portfolio of experiments that will be measured for its ROI in the future. As Jim had done 10 years earlier, dusted off a folder and said, what can we do here? And now has a whole new company based on that. Liberate resources, getting cash to people who can bring new ideas, regardless of where they are in the company. And then the last is to embrace the paradoxes. He talks about rewarding people for strategic variety and large-scale experimentation. So those are the 4 big points that Hamel makes, and I'd like to kind of close on that. And if anyone would like to stay for some conversation or networking, you're welcome to do that. I'm sure Kirk would be happy to leave the line open. But thank you so much to all the panelists.
Yes,
Thank you very much for having us. And in the chat box, Wendy's put the links and the instructions on how to get your business reentry cards for your businesses and employees to keep in their cars.
Really appreciate that. That's cool, Justin. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Allison, Jim, and Justin. This has been an amazing event, and I really have appreciated the real life leadership lessons I think that we've all learned from this. So this will be a recording, and we'll put this up.